So Obi, you see, in the last, you mentioned Nollywood. Nollywood started in the last decade of last century, okay? And in 3 decades, it has grown to become the third most productive industry behind Hollywood of America, Nollywood of India. Where do you think Nollywood is going in terms of influence, production, revenue, and job creation in Africa? Because see, I think Nollywood has gone beyond Nigeria. Okay, it's now an African, industry.
Phenomenal.
Yes, phenomenal. So where do you see it going?
Let me provide some correction, as it were.
Okay.
Nollywood, based on the 2009 UNICEF study,
okay,
is actually the second largest film industry in the world.
Wow.
Based on quantity of films.
Okay, quantity. Okay.
Ahead of Hollywood, but only behind India's Bollywood.
Okay, in terms of quantity. Yes. Okay.
In terms of the
quantity.
Number of films, feature films released. I'm not sure there is an up-to-date record of where that is, but we're not going to we're going to use that for reference purposes to say how the film industry that started from no artistic, no formal, no real world business idea would have flourished in 3 decades to that level. And there are a few reasons. So ordinarily, before the emergence of the Nollywood that we know, the film industry that we know that came on the back of Living in Bondage by Kenneth Nebwe. Before that, there was, the Nigerian film unit that was producing propaganda videos for the military, for the colonial government.
Okay.
And when we had independence, we had a television station which became
NTA,
main creative hub, NTA.
Before then the Yoruba NTA, it was called I can't remember.
Southwest Broadcasting Corporation.
Okay.
It was based in Ibadan, essentially. Yeah. So it was a Yoruba. It started in 1959, even before independence.
Yeah.
So that influenced what the very soapy, episodic nature of Nollywood films.
Yes.
It's an offshoot from that television history.
Yeah.
And then the Yoruba Traveling Theatre, which started
Ogunde
days of this world.
Oh my! I went to watch many of them.
They are the love of this world who evolved from stage productions to film production.
Yeah.
So that they can reduce the cost of their productions.
Yeah.
So all of those things influenced Nollywood. So when Nollywood evolved, it was ready, even though there wasn't formal training of the people in Idumota who were the driving force behind it.
Mm-hmm.
They had an array of talent in front of camera and a bunch of technical guys who were competent behind the camera, who had worked on NTA's productions, who had done some of the Yoruba Traveling Theatre films. So when the business idea of being able to sell VHS tapes with local content on it, because that's what it was.
Yes.
Being able to sell VHS tapes with local content on it. So when the pirates who were pirating Indian films and American films on those VHS tapes decided no longer to pirate those films, but instead to put local content on it in local languages, an industry was born.
Yeah.
But that industry, like I said, benefited from what was already existing, which was the NTA and the Ogundes of this world who had trained actors. you know. But the biggest factor in the success of Nollywood, especially at that early stage as an industry, the biggest factors, I would say, not one factor, there were several factors. One of them was the availability of that cheap technology.
Yeah.
At that time, the VHS tape was being eradicated all over the world, and most of the Japanese and Taiwanese companies that had warehouse full of those things were selling them on the cheap to Africa. A lot of people owned VHS players and TV.
Yeah.
And that was also part of the the oil boom money that Nigeria had in the 70s, but people could afford those things. So it meant that when the industry landed, there was a machinery of VHS tapes ready to play them.
Yeah.
If people didn't have VHS tapes, they're not going to buy
it. It didn't work. Yes.
So that was one of the most important factors that created the fertile ground for Nollywood to evolve. The second issue that helped Nollywood evolve was numbers.
Yeah.
If Nigeria was Togo,
it didn't work. Yeah.
Nollywood would have happened.
Yeah.
It's the sheer numbers, the millions of Nigerians who are at a level of economic survival to afford a few hundred nairas for entertainment.
Yeah.
If you are living from hand to mouth, entertainment becomes relegated to the background. So
yes,
there was a slightly economically empowered, huge number of people who were ready to embrace local content.
Yeah.
Because at that time, Indian films and Chinese films stopped selling.
Yes.
There was a renaissance, a cultural renaissance in our heads that we felt we want to see ourselves on TV. What do I know about an Indian? What do I know about a Chinese? And that whole combination of
factors,
confluence of circumstances, led to the very fertile ground upon which that living in bondage germinated. And once it did, the Nigerian spirit took over, which is, my friend has just bought a ticket and won the lottery. I am going to buy every ticket available to make sure that I'm the next person to win. And that's what they did. So everybody along that Idumota Street who were trading on VHS tapes and pirating old Indian films started. I have a cousin, he can write a script. Come and write a script. So the idea wasn't to make a brilliant film. It was just to tell a story, to communicate. And that's how the industry started. So with an industry like that, there was no government involvement. There was no organized commercial sector. The banks were not giving money. Everybody would go and sell land and borrow to make their own films, and they made the money back. A lot of them are rich. They have hotels all over the place.
Yeah.
Some of those guys in the early Nollywood stages. But like every industry, it needs to. The VHS and the VCD format reached what I would consider a crescendo.
Yeah.
At which point, overproduction, lack of quality, fatigue from the audience who were expecting some kind of development in the industry that wasn't forthcoming, meant that TV, they started showing Nollywood films on TV. Africa Magic was launched by Net, the South African company. And all of those circumstances brought Nollywood to a head, whereby the films were no longer selling. And something had to give. And what gave was a new generation of Nigerian filmmakers, in which I count myself, evolved and said, okay, we're going to take this Nollywood phenomenon and we're going to take it back. Let's take a step back and go back to art.
Yeah.
Let's not just think about the story. Let's think about how it's presented, how it's packaged. Let's think about presentation. Let's think about the script. Let's pay attention to details. Let's go to film festivals. Let's do cinemas. And then Silverbirds emerged in 2004 with a multiplex in VI. And before you know it, Nigerian was becoming, right now we have over 232 screens showing a mixture of Nollywood and Hollywood films. At that time, there was none, because all the cinemas before in the 80s had closed because of security, because of the fall of the naira against the dollar, and they couldn't buy the films, and they were converted into churches and warehouses. You know, so for an industry that has been through that, you see that the present stage whereby the big hitters of the global film industry, the Amazons of this world, the Netflix of this world, are pitching tent in Nigeria because they see Nigeria as the next frontier.
Yep.
And they are taking huge amounts of money on the future of Nigeria. But
Yep.
just like everything else, there's a flip side to that.
Oh yeah.
Because an industry that, so the main difference between Nollywood and a more artistic francophone film industry in Ouagadougou, in Mali, and in Mauritania, they had artistic filmmakers who were trained in Paris, who told great stories that made it to the Cannes and won awards at the Cannes.
Yeah.
But the biggest problem with those films was they were not sustainable. The money for those films came from France.
Yeah.
And he who pays the piper dictates the tune.
Yeah.
So, and for Nollywood, the main difference was that there was nobody bankrolling Nollywood. It was a self-sustaining industry.
Yeah.
That laid its own rules, that disobeyed the conventions of filmmaking, and yet survived. And like they say, it survived on what they call an infrastructure of piracy. It is the infrastructure of piracy that they used to sell pirate films, that they used to sell Nollywood, to grow Nollywood to where it is today.